Hey, Nish here, and I understand the frustration of learning how to play guitar and sing at the same time, having learned as an adult. Today I'm going to share with you a 3-step sort of framework that can help you learn pretty much any song and get it under your belt. Now, there is no secret trick or magic bullet. It is going to take practice, but hopefully with these tips, you can practice more efficiently. I'm going to give a demo later in the video, but otherwise, let's get started. Okay, I kind of lied about the 3-step. There is a 0-step, which is to get and use a metronome. Now, metronomes are really useful for working on your musical timing, which is a really key skill for any musician of any instrument. It's also one of the things that can go wrong when you're combining singing and playing guitar because that rhythm can become inconsistent. Now, when you're using a metronome, you kind of want it to be so slow that it's almost excruciating, that it's hard to make a mistake. And the reason for this is it will keep your rhythm really steady and make sure that you aren't speeding up and slowing down, which is what can typically happen when you practice without a metronome. Once you're comfortable at a slower pace, you can slowly ramp that up and get closer and closer to your target BPM. When you're practicing like this, 5 to 10 minute bursts are sufficient because it's quite a focused way of practicing. And you'll find, I find that practicing like this maybe once a day over the course of a week can make a huge difference. Another thing that you might want to think about starting to work on if you haven't already is having some way of keeping rhythm. Like the most common way to do this is to tap your foot. And so, rhythm can be split up into keeping the time and marking it. And what you want to do when you're using your metronome, you can try and mark the time which the metronome is keeping. So you could start to try and tap your foot, but this is going to take a while. It took me a good amount of time to be able to tap my foot and play and sing. So don't worry too much about that last part, but it's something to think about. So step 1, I'm going to assume you've got a song in mind that you know well, you have a sort of arrangement for it in a strumming pattern. First thing you want to do is get the guitar part done really well. You want to know that so well that you can play it without thinking too much about it. And the way you're going to do this is use the metronome, like I mentioned, to learn that rhythm really well from a slow pace and get it so it's very fluid and comfortable. What you're probably going to find is certain chord changes are trickier than others, and a really good method that Justin Guitar has for doing chord changes is the 1-minute chord change challenge, which is you basically setting a stopwatch for 1 minute, switching between the 2 chords you're struggling with, doing that a couple times a day, and I find in about a week that's in your muscle memory and you don't have as much trouble switching. Ideally, during this time, you want to get better at not needing to look at your hand. I personally still struggle with this sometimes though, so don't put too much pressure on yourself, but where you see opportunities for simple chord changes, it's a good chance to try and focus on getting that fluid and not needing to look. Step 2 is to hum the song while using a metronome. Now, why humming? It's a little bit easier than singing. You don't have to process the words, whether you're reading or recalling the lyrics from memory, and this means you've got a little bit more bandwidth to focus on the synergy between the two things. Now, again, you want to be using the metronome here, but sometimes I do find it's better to work without the metronome very briefly to get an idea of how the music's going. And this is where you probably find that it's actually quite complicated sometimes, the interplay between the rhythm of the words and the rhythm of the strumming pattern or whatever you're using. Like certain songs have a really strange combination. What you can do in these situations is switch to a very simple strumming pattern, like a simple quarter note on the beat strum pattern, in order to get the rhythm of the words with a constant time, and then you can later introduce the strumming pattern again. And finally, once you're comfortable with playing on a metronome, maybe nearly at the full pace, or maybe at 80% of the full pace of the song, you can now start to introduce the words. And I usually start off by reading them, and by practicing the song many times, I eventually, by osmosis, gain the words in my memory. That's another way to force yourself to learn to play the chords without needing to look. It will feel a bit slow and weird learning the words and singing them a bit slower, so obviously don't go too slow because then you'll be dragging out words that otherwise wouldn't. But again, it's really good to get things smooth, and this means that when you remove that metronome, you'll find that you have a much steadier rhythm. So now I'm going to illustrate how this method works using the chorus of one of my songs as an example. Okay, so I've got my metronome, I've got my guitar. I'm going to put it at 60 BPM for now, which is fairly slow for this song, and I'll show the strumming pattern that I've got. Now I can maybe up it a little bit and I'll hum along with it. You can even go an octave down. You don't have to sing at the same thing. So what I'll do is put the metronome up a little bit. Let's put it up to 72. show with the lyrics how that might sound.
I just wanna have it all, put the writings on the walls. Too late to change the past, and something's telling me this game won't last.
So there you have it. I hope this has been a useful video. I don't usually make much instructional content because I'm not super duper proficient in any way, shape or form, but there's a couple things I feel like I've had to struggle to learn, and maybe those are things that I can communicate. So do let me know if you think this has been interesting and you'd like to see more. Subscribe for more amateurish music endeavors. I also have a tech channel where I review various items of tech and music gear, which you can check out if you're interested. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.